I never thought my own sister would destroy our family. She stole thousands from our parents, convinced them I was the thief, and got me thrown out of my own home. But when I discovered what she was really hiding, everything I knew about our family changed forever. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. My father's expression hardened like concrete as he pointed toward the front door. That's enough, Alex. You've always resented your sister's success. Get out of my house, now. My mother couldn't even look at me, her eyes fixed on the floor, tears streaming down her cheeks. Neither of them would even glance at the bank statements clutched in my trembling hands, the evidence that could clear my name. I stood frozen in our family living room, surrounded by photographs chronicling our lives. In almost every frame, Emma smiled perfectly at the center, while I was relegated to the edges, often partially cropped out or caught mid-blink. A fitting visual metaphor for my entire existence in this family. 20 years of memories lined these walls, yet somehow I'd always been an afterthought. "Mom, please," I whispered, my voice cracking. "Just look at the statements. The transfers came from my account, not Emma's. I can prove it." She shook her head, still not meeting my eyes. "We trusted you, Alex. How could you do this to us after everything we've done for you? Everything they'd done for me?" I wanted to laugh at the bitter irony, for as long as I could. Remember, it had been me supporting them, emotionally, practically, and now financially, while they lavished attention and resources on my sister. "Dad, this isn't fair." I tried one last time, my hand outstretched with the papers. "You haven't even looked at—" I said, "Get out!" His voice thundered through the house, causing the family photos to vibrate slightly on the walls. Emma flinched theatrically behind him, playing her role to perfection. The concerned daughter, the victim of her jealous sister's accusations. I'm Alexandra Chen, 24 years old, a forensic accounting student at Northwestern University, and I've just been thrown out of my childhood home after being accused of stealing $12,000 from my parents. The truth? I've been sending them $500 monthly from my 2 part-time jobs to help after Dad's health scare left them struggling financially. My sister Emma has been intercepting these transfers, taking credit for them, and worse, stealing additional money while convincing them I'm the thief. Growing up in Evanston, Illinois, as Emma Chen's younger sister meant existing in a perpetual shadow. She was the gifted one, the social butterfly, the daughter who made my immigrant parents proud at every turn. I was the serious one, too analytical, too focused on practical matters and financial security. By high school, the pattern was firmly established. Emma received effusive praise for B- grades, while my straight A's were simply what was expected. Despite this, I loved my family deeply. When my father suffered a heart attack 18 months ago, I was the one who dropped everything to be by his side in the hospital for 2 weeks straight. I arranged payment plans with the billing department, research specialists, and coordinated his outpatient care. Emma sent flowers from New York, where she was attending a crucial networking event. The cardiac event had left Dad unable to continue his demanding work as a structural engineer. With Mom's elementary school teacher salary as their primary income, their finances had taken a significant hit. My parents had always been too proud to ask for help, especially as first-generation immigrants who had worked tirelessly to build their American dream. So last February, I quietly began transferring $500 monthly to their account, a substantial portion of what I earned between my campus library job and weekend shifts at an accounting firm. I didn't tell them at first. I wanted to help without wounding Dad's pride. I folded the bank statements and slipped them into my jacket pocket. What was the point? They'd already decided I was guilty. With leaden steps, I walked toward the door, each footfall feeling like a betrayal. Not mine. Theirs. "I never took anything from you," I said quietly, my hand on the doorknob. One day you'll realize that. Dad turned away, arms crossed. Mom continued to cry silently. Only Emma met my gaze, her eyes glittering with something that looked almost like triumph. I trudged through the sleet to my rusted Toyota, tears stinging my eyes in the biting November wind. The car had been a high school graduation gift, from my grandmother, not my parents. They had given Emma a new Audi for her graduation. She needs to make the right impression in the business world, Dad had explained when I questioned the disparity. Through the bay window, I could see Emma consoling our mother, patting her back with practiced sympathy. The perfect daughter comforting our parents after the terrible trauma I had supposedly inflicted. As I started my car, my phone vibrated with a text from Dad. "We're cutting off all financial help. If you want to make things right, return what you stole and apologize to your sister." I slammed my palm against the steering wheel. Return what I stole? I hadn't taken anything, and now they were withdrawing the partial tuition assistance that had been my only support from them, while they fully funded Emma's graduate degree, her downtown apartment, and her lifestyle. 3 months ago, Mom had mentioned how grateful they were for Emma's monthly contributions during a family dinner. I was confused but assumed they were talking about something else. When I gently clarified that I'd been the one sending money, they exchanged glances and changed the subject. I should have pressed harder then, should have shown them the transaction records, but I didn't want to make them uncomfortable. Last week, Dad called to ask why the monthly support had suddenly stopped. It hadn't. My October transfer had gone through as usual. That's when I began investigating and discovered Emma had somehow been intercepting my transfers, manipulating the records, and taking credit for my financial help. Worse, there were additional unauthorized withdrawals from their accounts that someone had tried to hide by altering statements. Given my background in forensic accounting, it hadn't taken long to uncover the deception. I'd printed everything out, arranged it chronologically, and highlighted the key discrepancies, certain that my parents would see reason once presented with clear evidence. I was wrong. Before pulling away, I noticed something unexpected. Emma had stepped away from our parents and was frantically texting someone, her face tense with what looked like panic rather than the smug satisfaction I'd expected. When Dad approached, "Her!" She quickly pocketed her phone and forced a smile. Something wasn't right. This wasn't just about taking credit for my financial help anymore. The expression on her face was pure fear. What exactly was my sister hiding? As I drove away from the only home I'd ever known, rain mingling with the tears on my face, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I would uncover the truth, no matter what it took. Not just for my sake, but for my parents. The neighborhood. Streets blurred past as my mind raced with questions. Why would Emma, who had everything, our parents' love, financial support, and endless opportunities, need to steal from them? And why frame me? There had to be more to this story, something beyond simple sibling rivalry or financial greed. Little did I know that what I would uncover in the coming days would shake our family to its core. I spent that night driving aimlessly through the rain-slicked streets of Chicago, unable to face returning to my small apartment. The unfairness of it all gnawed at me. I'd been trying to help my parents, and now I was cast out, labeled a thief by the very people I loved most in the world. Around midnight, I finally parked outside my building, a rundown 3-story walk-up, near campus. Unlike Emma's sleek downtown condo with its lake view and doorman, my place was all I could afford while balancing tuition and sending money to my parents. The irony wasn't lost on me. My roommate Jasmine was still awake despite the late hour, typing furiously on her laptop at our tiny kitchen table. She looked up when I walked in, her expression shifting from concentration to concern. "Girl, you look like hell. What happened?" She closed her computer and pushed a mug of tea toward me, a silent offering. I collapsed into the chair opposite her, the events of the day crashing over me in waves. "They think I stole from them, Jazz. My own parents believe I took their money. What? That's insane. Jasmine had met my family several times and knew about the stark contrast in how Emma and I were treated. Why would they think that? I rubbed my eyes, exhaustion settling into my bones. Emma. She's somehow been taking credit for the money I've been sending them. And worse, she's apparently been stealing additional funds and making it look like I did it. Jasmine's eyebrows shot up. Your perfect sister? The corporate lawyer who can do no wrong? The very same. I pulled out the bank statements, now crumpled from being clutched in my hand for hours. Look at these. The transfers from my account to theirs are right here, but somehow Emma convinced them she was the one helping. Jasmine examined the papers. Her brow furrowed. And they didn't even look at this evidence? Just took her word over yours? I laughed bitterly. Would you expect anything different? Emma has always been the golden child. Even when we were kids, she could do no wrong in their eyes. Growing up as Emma's sister meant always being second best. When we were children, it was almost comical. Emma would knock over a vase, and somehow I'd end up being scolded for not watching her carefully enough. By the time we reached school, the pattern was deeply entrenched. Emma excelled socially, becoming class president and prom queen, while I found my place in academic clubs and the world of numbers. My parents attended every one of Emma's debate competitions, but routinely missed my academic decathlons. They're cutting off my tuition help, I said flatly, staring into the mug of tea. Dad texted me after I left. Can they even do that? Aren't you on a partial scholarship? I am, but there's still a significant gap. They've been covering about 30% of my tuition, the absolute minimum they felt obligated to contribute. Meanwhile, they're paying 100% for Emma's law degree, plus her living expenses. Jasmine's expression turned serious. What are you going to do? Can you get more student loans? My credit's already maxed out with the existing loans. I've been working 2 jobs just to make ends meet, and a third of my income went to helping my parents. I rested my forehead against my palms. And now, to top it all off, I'm apparently a thief who needs to return what I stole. This is messed up, Alex. Really messed up. I nodded, then remembered the strange moment I'd witnessed before leaving my parents' house. The weird thing is, Emma seemed scared. Not triumphant, not smug, but genuinely panicked. She was texting someone frantically when she thought no one was watching. Jasmine leaned forward. That's odd. If she successfully framed you and your parents believe her, why would she be panicking? Exactly. There's something else going on. This isn't just about taking credit for my financial help, or even about stealing their money. I straightened up, a new determination cutting through my exhaustion. I'm going to figure out what she's really up to. How? Your parents won't even talk to you. I tapped the bank statements. I'm a forensic accounting student, remember? Following money trails is literally what I'm being trained to do. For the first time that night, Jasmine grinned. The sister picked the wrong sister to frame. That night, despite my exhaustion, I barely slept. My mind kept returning to Emma's panicked expression, to the text message she'd been so desperate to hide. What could have her so worried if she'd successfully manipulated our parents? The question nagged at me until dawn broke, gray and overcast, matching my mood perfectly. The next morning, I called in sick to both my jobs and sat up at the kitchen table with my laptop, a notepad, and a pot of coffee strong enough to strip paint. If I was going to unravel whatever Emma was involved in, I needed to approach it methodically. First, I logged into my banking portal and downloaded my complete transaction history for the past year. Every transfer to my parents' account was clearly documented, $500 on the 15th of each month, beginning in February. Next, I called the bank's customer service line. I'm concerned about some potentially fraudulent activity on my parents' account, I explained. I've been making regular transfers to help them financially, but there seems to be some confusion about where the money is coming from. The representative was sympathetic, but firm. I understand your concern, but I can't provide information about another customer's account without proper authorization. I had anticipated this response. I completely understand. Could you at least confirm whether transfers from my account have been received by their account? I have the transaction IDs. After verifying my identity, the representative confirmed what I already knew. All my transfers had indeed been received by my parents' account. This confirmed that Emma hadn't somehow intercepted the money before it reached them. Whatever deception she was running, it happened after the funds were deposited. Next, I turned to social media. Emma had always been meticulous about maintaining her perfect image online. Carefully curated photos of business meetings, charity galas, and fitness achievements. I scrolled through her recent posts, looking for anything unusual. At first glance, everything seemed normal. Emma at a law firm event, Emma volunteering at a food bank, Emma at brunch with colleagues. But when I compared the timestamps with what I knew about her schedule, inconsistencies emerged. She'd posted about attending a legal conference in Washington, D.C. during a week when Mom had mentioned she was visiting friends in Atlantic City. I started a timeline on my notepad, marking these discrepancies. What else was she lying about? And more importantly, why? By mid-afternoon, Jasmine returned from her classes to find me surrounded by notes, printouts, and empty coffee mugs. "Making progress?" she asked, dropping her backpack and peering at my work. "Some," I admitted. "I've confirmed my transfers went through, so Emma didn't intercept the money. She's just taking credit for it somehow. And there are gaps in her social media that don't add up with what she's told our parents. What about the additional money that's missing? The money they think you stole?" I rubbed my temples. That's where I'm stuck. Without access to their complete bank records, I can't trace where that money went. Jasmine sat down opposite me. "Have you considered going to the police? This is identity theft and fraud." I shook my head. "I can't do that to my parents. They're already stressed about Dad's health and finances. Having their daughter arrested would destroy them." I sighed. Plus, without more evidence, it would be my word against Emma's. And we both know who they'd believe. "What about her phone? You said she was texting someone in a panic. Could that be a clue?" "Definitely, but I don't exactly have access to her messages." Jasmine drummed her fingers on the table. "What about her social connections? Anyone who might know what she's really up to?" I was about to dismiss the idea when a name surfaced in my memory. Tyler, Emma's ex-boyfriend. They broke up about 6 months ago and it wasn't amicable. He called the house once after the breakup, trying to reach her. He seemed upset, said something about her living a lie before Dad hung up on him. You contact him?" I nodded slowly. "I think he works at that trendy bar in Lincoln Park, the one with the rooftop garden." "Skyline?" Jasmine suggested. "I know the place." That's it. I closed my laptop. I think it's time I had a conversation with Tyler. Skyline was crowded for a Thursday night, the after-work crowd spilling out onto the heated rooftop despite the November chill. I spotted Tyler behind the bar, his tattooed arms visible as he mixed cocktails with practiced efficiency. I waited until there was a lull in orders before approaching. "Tyler, I'm Alex Chen, Emma's sister." Recognition, followed by wariness, flashed across his face. "Emma's sister? What are you doing here?" "I need to talk to you about my sister. It's important." Tyler glanced around the bar, then jerked his head toward a door marked "Staff Only." "My break's in 10 minutes. Wait for me back there." The alley behind the bar was cold and damp, smelling of garbage and stale beer. Tyler emerged, lighting a cigarette with hands that trembled slightly in the chill. "I haven't spoken to Emma in months," he said, exhaling a cloud of smoke. "Not after what happened." "What did happen?" I asked. "When you called our house, you said she was living a lie." Tyler laughed humorlessly. "That's putting it mildly." He studied me. seeming to debate how much to share. "How much do you know about your perfect sister's life?" "Apparently less than I thought. My parents think I stole money from them, but I'm pretty sure Emma's behind it. Something like validation," flickered across Tyler's face. "That tracks. Emma's got expensive tastes and even more expensive problems." "What kind of problems?" He took another long drag of his cigarette. "Ever heard of the Golden Horseshoe?" I shook my head. "It's an underground casino. Very exclusive. Very illegal. Emma started going there about a year ago. Said it was just for networking with the high-roller lawyer crowd." His eyes hardened. "By the time we broke up, she was going 4-5 nights a week." The pieces started clicking into place. "She has a gambling problem," Tyler snorted. "Problem is an understatement. Last time I saw her, she was down over 30 grand, betting thousands on single hands of poker, taking cash advances on multiple credit cards. It was scary, Alex. When I tried to intervene, she broke it off." My mind reeled with this new information. Emma, the golden child, the perfect daughter, had a severe gambling addiction. And if she was down $30,000 6 months ago, how much deeper was she now? "Did my parents know about any of this?" Tyler shook his head. "No way. Emma was obsessed with keeping her image intact. You know how she is. Always has to be the perfect daughter, the successful lawyer, the one who has it all together." He flicked his cigarette into a puddle. "It's all smoke and mirrors, though. Her fancy apartment? She was behind on rent. Designer clothes, maxed out credit cards. The business trips and legal conferences? All covers for gambling benders." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the November air. "And now she's stealing from our parents and blaming me." "Not surprised," Tyler said quietly. "She's desperate, and desperate people do desperate things." "Do you think she's still going to this Golden Horseshoe place?" "Almost certainly. Addicts don't just stop without intervention." He checked his watch. "I need to get back inside. But listen, be careful. The people who run that casino aren't the forgiving type. If Emma owes them money—" He left the sentence hanging, but his meaning was clear. My sister wasn't just destroying herself. She could be in actual danger. "How would someone even find this place?" I asked. Tyler hesitated, then pulled out a matchbook and pressed it into my hand. "I shouldn't be giving you this. Just, whatever you do, don't mention my name." The matchbook was plain black with a small golden horseshoe embossed on the front. Inside was written an address in Chicago's West Loop area. As Tyler turned to go back inside, he paused. "Your sister needs help, Alex. Real help. Even if she doesn't want it. Even if she hates you for it." I nodded, clutching the matchbook tightly. "Thank you." Walking back to my car, I felt the weight of this new knowledge settling heavy on my shoulders. My sister, the sister who had always seemed so perfect, so put together, was gambling away her future and stealing from our parents to fund her addiction. And now I had to decide what to do about it. I sat in my car outside the bar for nearly an hour, the black matchbook resting on my dashboard like a ticking bomb. The revelation about Emma's gambling addiction had shifted everything. This wasn't just about sibling rivalry or her taking credit for my financial support. She was in serious trouble, perhaps even danger. I called Jasmine to fill her in on what I'd learned. An underground casino? Jasmine sounded incredulous. "Are you sure this Tyler guy is reliable?" "He had no reason to lie," I replied, watching raindrops trace patterns down my windshield. "And it explains everything. The missing money, Emma's panic, the desperation to blame someone else. So what's your next move? Please don't tell me you're thinking of going to this Golden Horseshoe place." The silence that followed answered her question. "Alex, no. Those kinds of establishments aren't exactly known for their friendly customer service if things go south. I need proof, Jazz. Something concrete that my parents can't ignore." I stared at the matchbook. "If I can document that Emma's been gambling, maybe even catch her in the act." And then what? Your parents welcome you back with open arms and disown their precious daughter? Come on, girl. Even with evidence, they might not believe you. Her words stung because they contained a kernel of truth. My parents had spent decades seeing what they wanted to see when it came to Emma. Would hard evidence really change that? I have to try, I said finally. Not just to clear my name, but because Emma needs help. Real help. She's destroying herself. And my parents are enabling it without even knowing. Jasmine sighed heavily over the phone. If you're dead set on this, at least don't go alone. I'm coming with you. No way. I'm not dragging you into this mess. It's not a request, Chen. You're not going to some illegal gambling den by yourself. End of discussion. Despite the circumstances, I found myself smiling at my friend's loyalty. Fine, but we're just going to observe, document what we see, and leave. No confrontations, no gambling. Agreed. When are we doing this? I considered my options. If Emma's gambling was as compulsive as Tyler suggested, she would likely be there. On a weekend night when the stakes would be highest. Tomorrow night, Friday. That gives us time to prepare. The next day passed in a blur of anxiety and preparation. Between classes and my library shift, I researched everything I could about gambling addiction, documentation methods, and somewhat uneasily, the potential legal ramifications of entering an illegal gambling establishment. By evening, Jasmine and I had developed a simple plan. We would dress appropriately to blend in, bring our phones to discreetly document Emma's presence and activities, and stay just long enough to gather conclusive evidence. In and out, no complications. As we dressed in our best attempt at upscale attire, borrowed cocktail dresses and the nicest heels we owned, Jasmine voiced what we were both thinking. This is probably the stupidest thing we've ever done. I nodded, adjusting a borrowed necklace. Probably. The address on the matchbook led us to an unassuming building in the West Loop, sandwiched between a high-end restaurant and a boutique. Clothing store. No sign indicated what lay inside, just a simple black door with a small camera mounted above it. Are you sure this is the place? Jasmine whispered as we approached. Before I could answer, the door opened, revealing a broad-shouldered man in a tailored suit. Can I help you, ladies? His tone suggested he was not, in fact, inclined to help us at all. I cleared my throat. We're here for the horseshoe. I tried to project confidence I didn't feel. The man's expression remained impassive. Do you have an invitation? My heart sank. Tyler hadn't mentioned anything about needing an invitation. Just as I was about to admit defeat, inspiration struck. My sister, Emma Chen, is a regular here. She suggested I stop by. It was a gamble. But if Emma truly frequented this place as often as Tyler claimed, they might recognize her name. The doorman's expression flickered with recognition. Ms. Chen's sister? One moment. He stepped back inside, presumably to verify my claim. Jasmine shot me a nervous glance. What if they call her to confirm? I hadn't considered that possibility. If Emma learned I was here, my entire plan would unravel. But before I could panic, the doorman returned. You and your friend may enter. Please follow house rules. No phones on the gaming floor, no photography, and all debts must be settled before leaving. The management reserves the right to refuse service to anyone at any time. We nodded our understanding and stepped through the threshold into a different world. The Golden Horseshoe belied its seedy underground status with an interior of startling opulence. Crystal chandeliers hung from coffered ceilings, illuminating walls paneled in dark wood. Well-dressed patrons clustered around gaming tables where cards were dealt with fluid precision and chips worth thousands changed hands with casual indifference. Holy, Jasmine whispered, trailing off as she took in our surroundings. A hostess approached, her smile professional but eyes assessing. First time at the Horseshoe, ladies? Could I interest you in a complimentary drink while you get acquainted with our offerings? Thank you, I replied, accepting the champagne flute she offered. "We're actually looking for my sister, Emma Chen. Is she here tonight?" The hostess's smile didn't waver, but something knowing entered her eyes. "Ms. Chen is at her usual table in the high-stakes room, through those doors and to the left, though I should mention that we value our members' privacy." The warning was clear, but at least we knew Emma was here. We thanked her and made our way toward the indicated doors, sipping champagne that probably cost more than our textbooks. "What's the plan now?" Jasmine muttered as we approached the high-stakes room. "We still can't use our phones in here. I hadn't worked out this part completely. We need to see her gambling, confirm it's really happening. Then maybe we can follow her when she leaves, talk to her directly." Jasmine looked dubious but nodded. "Lead the way." The high-stakes room was smaller, more intimate, with fewer tables and higher tension in the air. And there, at a poker table, near the center of the room, sat my sister. Emma looked both familiar and like a stranger. She wore a black cocktail dress I'd never seen before, her hair swept up elegantly. But her face was transformed by an intensity I didn't recognize, eyes locked on her cards with laser focus, fingers tapping restlessly against her substantial stack of chips. We positioned ourselves at the bar where we could observe, without being immediately noticed. Over the next hour, we watched as Emma played hand after hand of high-stakes poker, her expressions cycling between elation and despair. She won a few hands but lost many more, each loss followed by increasingly desperate betting. "That's at least 5,000 she just lost," Jasmine whispered after a particularly brutal hand. "In one bet, that's more than a semester's tuition." I nodded grimly, watching as Emma signaled for another drink. Her fourth since we'd been watching. Her movements were becoming less precise, her decisions more reckless. Then something unexpected happened. A well-dressed man in his 50s approached Emma, placing a proprietary hand on her shoulder. She stiffened, then forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. They spoke briefly before he handed her what looked like a small envelope. Emma slipped it into her purse, her expression a mixture of relief and shame. "Who's that?" Jasmine asked. "No idea," I murmured, but an uneasy feeling settled in my stomach. The interaction didn't look friendly or casual. It looked like a transaction. As if sensing our attention, Emma suddenly looked up. Our eyes met across the room, and for one frozen moment, shock registered on her face. Then panic. She hurriedly gathered her remaining chips and stood, saying something to the dealer before making a beeline for a side door. "She's leaving," I said, already moving. "Come on." We followed at a distance, passing through the side door into a dimly lit corridor that eventually led to an alley behind the building. We emerged just in time to see Emma hurrying toward the street, fumbling with her phone. "Emma!" I called out, jogging to catch up. She froze, then slowly turned to face me, her expression hardening. "What are you doing here, Alex?" "I could ask you the same thing," I replied, stopping a few feet away. Jasmine hung back, giving us space. "I know about the gambling, Emma. I know you've been stealing from Mom and Dad to fund it." A flash of vulnerability crossed her face before her walls slammed back up. "You don't know what you're talking about, and I'm not the one who stole from them. You did." "Stop lying," my voice echoed in the alley. "I've been watching you lose thousands at that table. Tyler told me everything, how you've been coming here for months, how deep in debt you are." At the mention of Tyler's name, Emma's composure faltered. "Tyler should mind his own business." "This is my business, Emma. You made it my business when you framed me for theft and got me thrown out of the house." She looked away, shoulders tight with tension. "You wouldn't understand." "Try me." For a moment, I thought she might actually open up, might finally tell the truth. Then her phone buzzed in her hand. She glanced at the screen, and that same panic I'd witnessed at our parents' house washed over her features. "I have to go." She turned to leave. "Emma, wait. Who was that?" Man who gave you the envelope. What kind of trouble are you in? She paused, not turning around. Stay out of this, Alex. For your own good. And don't come back here. These aren't people you want to know. Before I could respond, she hurried away, disappearing around the corner, onto the main street. Jasmine approached, placing a hand on my shoulder. That went well. I sighed, frustration gnawing at me. At least we confirmed she's gambling. But there's something else going on. Did you see that guy who approached her? And the way she reacted to that text message? Yeah, that didn't look like a friendly exchange. Jasmine glanced back at the club's door. Maybe we should go before someone comes looking for us. She was right. We'd accomplished our primary goal, confirming Emma's gambling, but had stumbled onto something potentially more sinister in the process. Back at our apartment, I paced the small living room, piecing together what we knew. Emma has a serious gambling addiction. She's been stealing from our parents to fund it and blaming me to cover her tracks. But there's something else. I trailed off, thinking about the man with the envelope, Emma's obvious fear. Could she owe money to dangerous people? Jasmine suggested from the couch. Like loan sharks or something? The thought had crossed my mind. It's possible. Tyler warned that the people running that place aren't the forgiving type. So what now? You have confirmation she's gambling, but no actual proof to show your parents. We couldn't take pictures or videos in there. She was right. It was our word against Emma's, and my parents had already shown which one of us they believed. I need to get access to their bank statements, I said slowly. The complete records. If I can trace exactly where the money went and when, I can prove Emma's been lying. And how exactly are you going to get those statements? Your parents aren't exactly taking your calls right now. I rubbed my temples, trying to think. Mom keeps financial records in her home office. Dad's never been good with paperwork, so she handles all the banking. If I could get into the house while they're out. Jasmine looked alarmed. Whoa, are you talking about breaking in? To your parents' house? It's not breaking in if I still have a key, I argued, though I knew how weak that sounded. Look, I'm not planning to steal anything. I just need to document the bank statements. In and out, 20 minutes tops. This is getting more illegal by the minute, Jasmine muttered. More illegal than my sister potentially borrowing money from. Criminals and framing me for theft? I countered. Jasmine threw up her hands in surrender. Fine, but at least wait until you know they'll be gone for a while. The last thing you need is your dad walking in while you're going through their files. Nodded, already formulating a plan. Sunday, they always go to my aunt's house for lunch after church. They're usually gone for at least 3 hours. The next day, Saturday, passed with excruciating slowness. I kept checking my phone, half hoping my parents would call, half dreading what I might learn when I finally accessed their financial records. By evening, the waiting had become unbearable. I'm going for a walk, I told Jasmine. Need to clear my head. The November air was brisk but refreshing as I wandered through campus, eventually finding myself near the economics building where most of my classes were held. To my surprise, the lights were on in Professor Watkins' office. As the department head and my faculty advisor, Professor Watkins, had been a mentor throughout my studies in forensic accounting. On impulse, I entered the building and knocked on her door. Alex? She looked up from her papers, seeming pleased if surprised to see me. What brings you here on a Saturday evening? Sorry to disturb you, Professor. I just saw your light on and… Not at all. Come in, sit down. She cleared a stack of papers from the chair across from her desk. I'm just reviewing some case studies for Monday's lecture. I hesitated, then sat. Professor Watkins had always been approachable, known for taking a genuine interest in her students' well-being. Is everything all right? She asked, studying my face. You seem troubled. Perhaps it was the kindness in her voice, or the stress of the past days. But suddenly I found myself telling her everything. The money I'd been sending my parents, Emma's deception, the gambling, my suspicions about her deeper involvement with the casino, and my plan to examine my parents' bank statements. When I finished, Professor Watkins was silent for a long moment, her expression grave. "That's quite a situation," she said finally, "and I'm concerned about your plan to enter your parents' home without their knowledge, even if you do have a key." I nodded, feeling slightly ashamed. "I know it's not ideal, but I don't see another option. They won't believe me without evidence. There might be a better way." She leaned forward. "In my consulting work, I've dealt with cases of financial fraud within families. It's more common than you might think, especially when addiction is involved. What would you suggest? First, document everything on your end, your transfers to your parents, any communications about the money. Second, try approaching your mother directly, away from your father and sister. Mothers often have better intuition about these matters." I shook my head. "She won't even speak to me." Then the third option is more official. File a police report for identity theft and financial fraud. The police can subpoena the bank records legally. "I can't do that to Emma," I said immediately. "She needs help, not a criminal record." Professor Watkins nodded as if she'd expected this response. "Then perhaps there's a fourth way. Do you know if your parents' bank offers online access to their accounts?" "They do. Mom set it up last year, but she's not very tech-savvy. I helped her with the initial setup." "Do you recall if she saved the password somewhere?" Many older adults write down their passwords. A memory surfaced. Mom writing down her banking information in her small address book, the one she kept in her desk drawer. She might have. But accessing their account that way, isn't that illegal too? Professor Watkins raised an eyebrow. "I'm certainly not advising you to do anything illegal, Alex. I'm merely asking if such access exists. If it does, and if someone were to access those records with permission, they might find the evidence needed to help both your parents and your sister before more damage is done." I understood what she wasn't saying explicitly. "Thank you, Professor. You've given me a lot to think about." As I left her office, a new plan was forming, one that might avoid the risks of entering my parents' house while still getting the evidence I needed. Sunday morning arrived with a clarity of purpose. Instead of going to my parents' house during their church outing, I decided to try a different approach. I would call my mother directly, one last attempt at honest communication before taking more drastic measures. I waited until 11:30, when church would be ending, and dialed her number, expecting it to go straight to voicemail since Dad had mentioned blocking my number. To my surprise, it rang. Even more surprising, she answered. "Hello?" Her voice was cautious, uncertain. "Mom? It's Alex. Please don't hang up." A pause. "Alex." Her tone was difficult to read. "Your father said we're not supposed to talk to you until you apologize." "I know, but Mom, I need you to listen to me. Just for a minute. It's important." I took a deep breath. "I've been sending you and Dad money for the past 10 months. $500 every month, directly to your joint account. I have the bank records to prove it. The transfers have my name on them." "Emma explained that," she said, but I detected a hint of doubt. "She said you were trying to confuse us, that you'd set up the transfers after taking money from our accounts to cover your tracks." "Mom, that doesn't even make sense. Why would I send you money if I was stealing from you? And have you actually seen Emma make her supposed transfers? Have you seen proof?" Silence. Then, "We trust your sister, Alex." "I know you do, but trust should be verified, especially when it comes to finances. Please just check your bank records. Look at the transfer history, the deposit records. If I'm wrong, I'll apologize to everyone and never bring it up again." More silence. I could almost hear her thinking, "There's something else, Mom. Something about Emma that you need to know. It's serious, and it's going to be hard to hear, but it's the truth." "What are you talking about?" Wariness crept into her voice. Emma has a gambling problem. A serious one. She's been frequenting an underground casino called the Golden Horseshoe. I've seen her there, losing thousands in single hands of poker. That's ridiculous, Mom said, but without conviction. Your sister doesn't gamble. I saw her with my own eyes, Mom. Friday night. And she's in trouble. Not just addiction trouble, but possibly with dangerous people. The money that's gone from your accounts? That's where it went. To gambling debts. A long pause followed. When my mother spoke again, her voice was barely audible. Your father would never believe this. No, that's why I'm talking to you. You've always been the practical one, the one who handles the finances. Just check the records, Mom. Look for withdrawals near the West Loop area of Chicago, especially on weekends. Look for cash advances on credit cards. The evidence is there, if you're willing to see it. I heard muffled voices in the background, likely my father wondering who she was talking to. I have to go, she said quickly. Your father's coming. Mom, please. I'll look, she whispered before hanging up. It wasn't much, but it was something. A crack in the wall of denial my parents had built around Emma. Whether my mother would actually check the records and what she would do if she found evidence supporting my claims remained to be seen. The next 2 days passed in agonizing silence. I checked my phone obsessively, hoping for a call or text from my mother, but nothing came. Had she looked at the bank records as promised? Had she found the evidence of Emma's deception? Or had she dismissed our conversation entirely, choosing, once again, to believe in her golden child's innocence? Meanwhile, I threw myself into my coursework, trying to distract myself from both the family drama and the looming financial crisis I faced. Without my parents' contribution to tuition, I would need to come up with an additional $7,000 for the upcoming semester, money I simply didn't have. On Tuesday afternoon, as I left my advanced forensic analysis class, my phone finally buzzed with a text. My heart leaped, thinking it might be my mother, but the message was from an unknown number. Stay out of my business, or you'll regret it. A chill ran down my spine. There was no signature, but I knew exactly who had sent it. Emma. The question was, had something specific triggered this threat? Or was she simply responding to my confrontation outside the casino? I debated how to respond, or whether to respond at all. In the end, I typed, I'm trying to help you, Emma, before you get in too deep. 3 dots appeared, indicating she was typing a reply, then disappeared. No further messages came through. When I returned to the apartment that evening, Jasmine was waiting with unexpected news. Your mom called here while you were in class, she said without preamble. On our landline. We rarely used the apartment's landline. It had come with the place and we'd kept it mainly for emergencies. My mother must have found the number in my emergency contact information. What did she say? I asked, my pulse quickening. She wants to meet you. Tomorrow at 2 p.m. at the Cornerstone Cafe downtown. She was very specific about the time and place, and she said to come alone. My mind raced with possibilities. If Mom wanted to meet in a public place, away from both Dad and Emma, it had to mean she'd found something in the bank records. Something she wanted to discuss without their knowledge. Did she sound, I don't know, angry? Upset? I asked. Jasmine shook her head. More like worried. Really worried. She said it was urgent, but she wouldn't tell me why. The next day, I arrived at Cornerstone Cafe 20 minutes early, too anxious to sit still at home. The cafe was busy with the lunch crowd, but I secured a quiet table in the back corner, positioning myself to watch the entrance. At exactly 2 p.m., my mother walked in. Her appearance shocked me. In just a week, she seemed to have aged years. Her normally immaculate hair was hastily pulled back, her face drawn with worry lines I hadn't noticed before. She scanned the cafe nervously before spotting me. As she approached, I stood, uncertain whether to hug her or maintain distance. She solved the dilemma by embracing me tightly, something she rarely did even in the best of times. "Alex," she said, her voice wavering slightly. "Thank you for coming." "Of course, Mom." We sat, an awkward silence descending as a server brought water to our table. After taking our orders, tea for her, coffee for me, my mother finally spoke. "I looked at the bank records," she said quietly, her eyes fixed on the table. "All of them, going back a year." I waited, letting her continue at her own pace. "The transfers from your account are all there, just as you said. Every month, like clockwork." She looked up at me, her eyes glistening. "You've been helping us all this time, and we didn't even know." Relief washed over me. "So you believe me now?" She nodded, then reached into her purse and withdrew a manila folder. "There's more, much more. I printed everything. Account statements, credit card bills, withdrawal records." She slid the folder across the table. "It's worse than you said, Alex. Much worse." I opened the folder to find meticulously organized financial records. Mom had always been thorough with documentation, a trait I'd inherited. As I scanned the pages, the full scope of Emma's deception became clear. Beyond taking credit for my monthly transfers, she had been systematically draining their accounts for over a year. ATM withdrawals near the Golden Horseshoe, multiple cash advances on credit cards, even a second mortgage on the house that my father apparently knew nothing about. All told, Emma had stolen nearly $127,000. "Mom, this is—" I struggled to find words. "I know." Her voice was barely audible. "I knew something wasn't right with our finances. Bills I thought were paid would suddenly show as overdue. Accounts that should have had sufficient funds were constantly running low. But whenever I questioned it, your father would say I was being forgetful, or Emma would offer to help with the finances." Anger flared within me, not just at Emma for her theft, but at my father for dismissing my mother's concerns, for enabling Emma's deception through his blind faith in her. "Does Dad know about any of this?" I asked. She shook her head. "Not yet. I wanted to talk to you first, to apologize for not believing you and—" She hesitated. "To ask for your help." "My help? With what?" "I don't know what to do, Alex. If your father finds out the full extent of this, it could kill him. His heart isn't strong, and the betrayal—" She broke off, struggling to maintain composure. "And Emma. What she's done is wrong, terribly wrong, but she's still my daughter. I don't want to see her in jail." I understood my mother's dilemma. The evidence in my hands was enough to send Emma to prison for felony fraud and theft. But would criminal charges really help anyone in this situation? My father's health could indeed be endangered by such a shock. And despite everything, I didn't want to destroy my sister's life. I wanted her to get the help she clearly needed. "What about the money?" I asked. "Can you and Dad absorb this kind of loss?" My mother's expression crumpled. "The second mortgage is the worst part. If we can't make the payments, we could lose the house. Your father doesn't even know I signed those papers." Emma forged his signature on the application. This was identity theft on top of everything else. "Mom, that's serious. Really serious." "No." She wrung her hands anxiously. "I confronted Emma last night, after your father went to bed. I showed her some of what I'd found. Not everything, just enough to let her know I was aware of what she'd been doing." "How did she react?" "At first, she denied everything. Then she got angry, accused me of spying on her. Finally, she broke down crying, said she was in trouble, that she owed dangerous people money." Mom's voice quavered. "She said if she didn't pay them soon, they would hurt her, maybe even hurt us. So my suspicions about Emma being in debt to criminals were correct. This wasn't just about gambling addiction anymore. My sister had entangled herself with people who used violence to collect debts." "Did she say how much she owes?" I asked. $50,000, due by the end of the week." I whistled low under my breath. And if she doesn't pay? She wouldn't say specifically, just that it would be bad. Very bad. Mom dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. She begged me not to tell your father, said she would fix everything if I just gave her a little more time. You can't give her more. Money, Mom. You know that, right? It would just disappear into the gambling black hole. She nodded miserably. I know. But what options do we have? I can't go to the police. It would destroy your father and send Emma to jail. I can't pay these loan sharks or whatever they are. And I can't just do nothing and let them hurt my daughter. I studied the financial documents again, thinking through possibilities. The first step is to secure your remaining finances. Change all passwords, close any joint accounts Emma has access to, freeze your credit so she can't open more lines of credit in your or Dad's names. I've already started that process, Mom said, surprising me with her proactiveness. What else? Emma needs professional help. Gambling addiction is a disease, and she won't stop without intervention. There are treatment programs specifically for gambling disorders. She'd never agree to that, not voluntarily. Then we make it a condition of not pressing charges. I hated leveraging the threat of legal consequences, but it might be the only way to get through to Emma. As for the debt, this was the trickiest part. Dangerous creditors wouldn't simply go away because Emma entered treatment. They would want their money, one way or another. How much do you and Dad have in available funds right now? I asked. Mom looked uncomfortable, but answered honestly. About $30,000 in accessible savings. The rest is in retirement accounts with penalties for early withdrawal. So we're still $20,000 short, even if you emptied your savings, which would leave us with nothing for emergencies, for your father's medical needs. I nodded, understanding the impossible situation. What about the house? How much equity do you have in it, even with the second mortgage? Quite a bit. We bought it for $220,000 20 years ago. It's worth close to $450,000 now. Even with both mortgages, we have substantial equity. An idea began to form. Not a perfect solution, but perhaps the least damaging option available. You could refinance, consolidate both mortgages into a new loan. With the house's increased value, you might be able to pull out enough cash to pay off these criminals and still have manageable monthly payments. But your father would have to know. He'd have to sign the refinancing papers. Yes, I acknowledged. You'd have to tell him something, Mom. Maybe not everything at once, but at least that there are financial issues that need addressing. She was quiet for a long moment, turning her teacup slowly in its saucer. There's something else you should know, Alex. Something I found in Emma's room last night after our confrontation. From her purse, she withdrew a small plastic bag containing what looked like casino chips, distinctive black chips with gold horseshoes embossed on them. I recognized them from your description of the casino. There were only 3, hidden in her jewelry box. Mom pushed the bag toward me. But there was also this. She produced a business card, plain white with just a name and phone number printed in black. Michael Donovan. Who's Michael Donovan? I asked. I don't know. But when I confronted Emma about the chips, she became hysterical. Begged me not to touch anything in her room, especially not to contact anyone whose information I might find. Something clicked in my memory. The well-dressed older man who had handed Emma an envelope at the casino. Could that have been Michael? Donovan? And if so, what was his relationship to my sister? Mom, there's something I didn't tell you about the night I saw Emma at the casino. There was a man, probably in his 50s, who gave her an envelope. The interaction seemed off. Not friendly. My mother's face paled. Do you think Emma is involved in something beyond gambling? Something worse? The possibility had crossed my mind. Underground casinos often served as fronts for other illegal activities. Money laundering, drug distribution, prostitution. Had Emma gotten caught up in something far more dangerous than compulsive gambling? I don't know, I admitted. But I think we need to find out before we can determine how to help her. Mom reached across the table and gripped my hand. I'm so sorry, Alex, for not believing you, for letting this go on so long. I should have seen the signs. It's not your fault, Mom. Emma's very good at manipulation, and she's had years of practice being the perfect daughter. She knew exactly how to exploit your trust. What do we do now? She asked, and in that moment, our roles seemed to reverse. The mother seeking guidance from her daughter. I considered our options carefully. First, we need to confirm exactly what Emma's involvement with these people is. Then we need to develop a plan to get her out of danger and into treatment. And throughout all of this, we need to find a way to tell Dad what's happening without risking his health. That's a lot. It is. But we don't have to do everything at once. Let's start with finding out who Michael Donovan is. As we left the cafe, my mother hugged me again, this time with a fierce protectiveness I hadn't felt since childhood. I'm proud of you, Alex, she whispered. I should have said that more often. Walking back to my car, I felt a bittersweet mixture of vindication and dread. My name was cleared in my mother's eyes, but the reality we now faced was far worse than a simple case of financial deception. My sister was in serious trouble, possibly in danger, and extricating her would require careful planning and difficult conversations. I looked at the business card in my hand. Michael Donovan. Whoever he was part of the puzzle we needed to solve. A puzzle that might reveal just how deep into the criminal underworld my sister had fallen. Back at my apartment, I laid out everything we knew on the kitchen table. The financial documents my mother had provided, the casino chips, and Michael Donovan's business card. Jasmine examined the evidence with a concerned expression. This is way bigger than we thought, she said, flipping through the bank statements. Your sister didn't just take a few $1,000s. This is grand theft. I know. I rubbed my temples, feeling the beginning of a stress headache. And now there's this mysterious Michael Donovan person and threats from dangerous people. How did it get this complicated? Gambling addiction is no joke, Jasmine said. My uncle struggled with it for years. It distorts your thinking, makes you do things you'd never normally consider. Lying, stealing, even worse sometimes. I picked up the business card, turning it over in my hands. The stark white card with its minimalist text offered no clues about who Michael Donovan might be or what his connection to Emma entailed. I need to find out who this guy is, I said, but I can't exactly call the number and ask, hey, what's your relationship with my gambling addict sister who owes criminals $50,000? Jasmine snapped her fingers suddenly. Professor Watkins. What about her? Didn't you say she does consulting work in financial fraud cases? Maybe she has contacts. Who could run this name through databases we don't have access to? It was worth a shot. I texted Professor Watkins asking for an urgent meeting, explaining briefly that my family situation had escalated and I needed her expertise. To my relief, she responded almost immediately, offering to see me in her office in an hour. Want me to come with you? Jasmine asked as I gathered the documents. I shook my head. Better if I go alone. The fewer people involved in this mess, the better. Professor Watkins listened intently as I updated her on everything that had transpired since our last conversation. My mother's confirmation of the financial fraud, the extent of Emma's theft, and the ominous threats from unknown creditors. This Michael Donovan character concerns me, she said, examining the business card. May I keep this briefly? I'd like to make a call. I nodded, and she stepped outside her office with the card. When she returned 10 minutes later, her expression was grave. I spoke with a colleague who consults for the Financial Crimes Division of the Chicago PD, she said, handing the card back to me. Michael Donovan is known to them, though they've never been able to build a solid case. He runs several businesses. that skirt the line between legal and illegal, including, it seems, the golden horseshoe. My stomach dropped. So the man I saw with Emma at the casino was likely the owner, yes. And if your sister owes his organization money, that's very troubling indeed. Donovan isn't known for violence personally, but he associates with people who are. What would someone like him want with my sister? Beyond her gambling debts, I mean. Professor Watkins hesitated. There are several possibilities, none of them good. Young women with gambling debts and professional credentials can be valuable to organizations like Donovan's in various ways: money laundering, serving as fronts for illicit businesses, even more direct forms of exploitation. My blood ran cold at the implications. Could Emma have gotten involved in criminal activities beyond gambling? Is that what she'd been so desperate to hide? What do I do, Professor? My mother's terrified of telling my father because of his heart condition. Emma's being threatened, and there's still the matter of the missing money. She considered the problem thoughtfully. You need a multi-pronged approach. First, secure your parents financially. Your refinancing suggestion was sound. Second, document everything meticulously in case legal action becomes necessary. Third, find out exactly what your sister's involvement with Donovan entails before attempting any intervention. And how do I do that last part? Emma's hardly being forthcoming. Sometimes the direct approach is best. She leaned forward. Go to the source. Meet with Donovan yourself. I stared at her, certain I'd misheard. Meet with a potential criminal? How would I even arrange that? You have his business card, and a legitimate reason to speak with him. Your sister's debts affect your family. Be respectful, professional, and most importantly, make no accusations or threats. Simply seek information. It was terrifying to consider, yet strangely logical. If we wanted to help Emma, we needed to understand exactly what she was involved in and what the consequences might be. I'll think about it, I said, gathering my documents. Thank you, Professor. One more thing, Alex, she called as I reached the door. Whatever you decide, don't go alone. That evening, I debated my options. Contacting Michael Donovan directly seemed risky, yet potentially necessary. But first, I needed to try one more. Time to get the truth from Emma herself. I texted her. I know about Michael Donovan. Mom knows everything too. We want to help, but we need the whole truth. Meet me tomorrow, 10 a.m., at Lakefront Park near the chess tables. Just you and me. Minutes passed with no response. Then, just as I was about to give up, my phone buzzed. Fine. But only you. No one else. The next morning dawned cold and overcast, matching my mood perfectly. I arrived at the park early, selecting a bench with clear sightlines in all directions, partly for privacy, partly from an abundance of caution given what I now knew about Emma's associates. She arrived precisely at 10, looking nothing like the confident, put-together sister I was accustomed to seeing. Her designer clothes had been replaced by jeans and a plain sweater, her usually perfect hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and she scanned the park nervously before approaching. You look terrible, I said, as she sat beside me, leaving a careful distance between us. Thanks a lot. Her voice lacked its usual sharp edge. You wanted to talk, so talk. No games, Emma. Mom showed me everything. The bank statements, the second mortgage, all of it. I know about the gambling and the money you owe. What I don't know is who exactly Michael Donovan is and what hold he has over you. At the mention of Donovan's name, Emma visibly flinched. Where did you hear that name? Mom found his card in your room, and I saw him with you at the Golden Horseshoe last. Friday night, older guy expensive suit gave you an envelope. Emma's face drained of color. You were there? Watching me? Are you insane? Do you have any idea how dangerous these people are? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Who is he, Emma? What have you gotten yourself into? She glanced around the park again, her hands trembling slightly. I can't talk about this here. They might be watching. Who might be watching? Emma, you need to tell me what's going on. Mom's terrified. And if you don't start talking, we're going to have to tell Dad. Everything. The mention of our father seemed to break through her paranoia. No, Dad can't know. His heart. Then start talking. Right now. Emma took a deep, shuddering breath. It started about a year ago. A client at the firm mentioned this exclusive poker game. High stakes, professional crowd, very discreet. I'd always been good at cards, so I thought, why not? A little excitement, some networking with wealthy clients. But you started losing. She nodded miserably. At first, it was manageable. I'd lose a few thousand, win it back next time. But then I hit a bad streak, really bad. I borrowed money. From the house, from Donovan, thinking I could win it back quickly. But you didn't. No. The deeper in debt I got, the more desperate my playing became. Donovan was understanding at first. Extended my credit line, gave me opportunities to win it back. Her voice turned bitter. I realized too late that was his strategy all along. Get people hooked, get them indebted, then own them. How much do you owe him in total? Officially? 50,000. But there's more to it now. She wrapped her arms around herself, as if trying to hold herself together. When I couldn't pay, Donovan offered me an alternative arrangement. My stomach, twisted with dread. What kind of arrangement? He owns several businesses beyond the casino. Restaurants, nightclubs, import companies. All of them need to move money through the banking system, clean money that won't trigger suspicious activity reports. Understanding dawned. He's using you to launder money. Emma nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. My position at the law firm gives me access to client escrow accounts, international wire transfers. It started small, helping structure transactions to avoid reporting requirements. But lately, he's been pushing for more. Larger amounts, riskier methods. The implications were staggering. Not only was Emma gambling away our parents' money, but she was actively participating in money laundering, a federal crime that could send her to prison for years. Why didn't you ask for help sooner? I demanded, anger mixing with concern. Before it got this bad? I was handling it, she snapped, a flash of the old Emma breaking through. I had a plan to win back everything I'd lost. One big score. That's the addiction talking, Emma. There was never going to be one big score. That's not how gambling works. She deflated again. I know that now. But by the time I realized how deep I was, it was too late. Donovan had evidence of what I'd done. If I went to the police, he'd make sure I went down for money laundering. If I tried to quit, he threatened to go after the family. So you decided to steal from Mom and Dad instead? To frame me? Shame crossed her face. I didn't start out meaning to frame you. I just saw the transfers you were making and took credit for them. It bought me time, made Mom and Dad think I was being responsible. Then, when more money went missing, it was easier to let them think it was you than admit what I'd done. The casual cruelty of it still stung, but I pushed my personal feelings aside to focus on the bigger problem. And now? What's Donovan expecting from you? Emma looked down at her hands. There's a big transaction coming up. Friday night. $500,000 from an overseas client that needs to be processed through several accounts. Donovan wants me to handle it. Create the paper trail, making it look legitimate. If I do this job, he'll forgive the $50,000 I owe him. And if you don't? He'll send people to collect from me, from Mom and Dad, from anyone connected to me. He made it very clear what happens to people who cross him. I absorbed this information, trying to see a way out of this seemingly impossible situation. Emma had entangled herself in serious criminal activity, putting not just her own freedom at risk, but potentially the safety of our entire family. You can't do this transaction, Emma. Money laundering at that scale. If you're caught, you're looking at serious federal prison time. You think I don't know that? Her voice rose in panic. But what choice do I have? If I don't do it, he'll come after all of us. There are other options. We can go to the police, explain that you're being coerced. No police. The vehemence in her voice startled me. Donovan has connections in the department. He'd know immediately, and we'd all pay the price. This seemed paranoid, but I couldn't risk dismissing the threat if there was any chance she was right. What about leaving town? You could disappear, start over somewhere. He'd find me. And then he'd go after Mom and Dad to draw me out. She gripped my arm suddenly. Unless we had enough money to pay him off completely. Not just the $50,000 I officially owe, but enough to make walking away worth his while. How much would that take? $200,000, minimum. Maybe more. I laughed incredulously. Where exactly do you think we're going to get that kind of money? Mom and Dad have already lost most of their savings to your gambling. I know. Emma ran her hands through her hair, a gesture of frustration I recognized from childhood. But there's the house equity. If they refinanced, they'd need to pull out way more than we discussed to cover a payoff that size. Dad would definitely notice, which means we'd have to tell him everything. Emma fell silent, the reality of our situation settling over us like a heavy blanket. After a moment, she spoke in a small voice I barely recognized. I really messed up, didn't I? All these years being the perfect daughter. And look at me now. A bitter laugh escaped her. You know what the worst part is? Deep down, I was always jealous of you. Jealous? Of me? The notion seemed absurd. You had everything. Mom and Dad's approval, the best schools, the prestigious career. But you had freedom, authenticity. You never had to pretend to be something you weren't just to keep everyone happy. She swiped at a tear. Do you know how exhausting it is, being perfect all the time? Never allowed to fail, to make mistakes? For the first time, I glimpsed something real beneath my sister's carefully constructed facade. A vulnerability and insecurity I'd never suspected existed. It didn't excuse what she'd done, but it helped me understand how she might have spiraled so dramatically when her perfect image began to crack. Emma, listen to me, I said, making a decision. We're going to fix this. Not by doing this transaction for Donovan, not by running away, but by facing this together, as a family. How? First, we tell Dad everything. The gambling, the theft, all of it. He'll hate me. His heart, Dad's stronger than you think. And keeping him in the dark isn't protecting him anymore. It's putting him in danger. He deserves to know what's happening so he can help protect himself and Mom. She looked uncertain but didn't argue further. Second, we document everything about your interactions with Donovan. Dates, amounts, any evidence of coercion. Not for the police, not yet, but as insurance. And then what? We still need money to pay him off. Let me worry about that part, I said, though I had no idea where we'd find that kind of money. The important thing is that you stop digging this hole deeper. No more gambling, no more financial transactions for Donovan, no more lies. Emma looked at me with something approaching respect, perhaps for the first time in our adult lives. When did my little sister get so capable? Around the same time my big sister started needing my help, I replied, standing up. Come on, we're going to see Mom, and then we're going to have a very difficult conversation with Dad. As we walked toward the parking lot, Emma asked quietly, Do you think they'll ever forgive me? They're our parents. They'll forgive you eventually, I said. The real question is, will you do what's necessary to earn that forgiveness? She nodded, determination replacing the fear in her eyes. Yes, whatever it takes. I hoped she meant it. Because what lay ahead would test all of us in ways we'd never imagined. The drive to our parents' house was tense, the silence between Emma and me heavy with anticipation. I'd called Mom ahead of time, explained that we were both coming over, and that it was time to tell Dad everything. Her fearful pause spoke volumes, but ultimately she agreed. This had gone too far to keep hiding the truth. "What exactly is the plan here?" Emma asked as we turned onto our parents' street. "We just walk in and announce that I've been stealing from them, gambling away their retirement, and am now involved with organized crime?" "Not quite that bluntly," I replied, though in essence, that was exactly what needed to happen. Mom will help ease him into it. The important thing is that we present a united front. No more accusations, no more blame games. Just the truth and a focus on solutions. Emma nodded, fidgeting with her seatbelt. "I've never seen Dad truly angry. Not at me, anyway. Well, there's a first time for everything. I wasn't trying to be cruel, but reality was what it was. Our father's selective blindness toward Emma's flaws was about to be forcibly removed." Mom was waiting on the porch when we arrived, wringing her hands anxiously. "Your father's in his study," she said after hugging us both. "I told him we need to have a serious family discussion. He thinks it's about you, Alex, about resolving the situation." "He's partially right," I said. "We are resolving the situation, just not the way he expects." We found Dad in his study, reviewing what looked like architectural plans, old habits from his engineering days. He looked up as we entered, his expression darkening when he saw me. "Rebecca, what is this?" he demanded, addressing my mother. "I told you Alex isn't welcome in this house until she apologizes and returns what she took." "Dad," Emma said before Mom or I could respond. "Alex didn't take anything. I did." The simple declaration hung in the air, creating a moment of frozen disbelief. Dad stared at Emma, then at Mom, then back to Emma. "What are you talking about?" he asked, his voice carefully measured. "Maybe we should all sit down," Mom suggested gently. "This is going to be a difficult conversation." For the next hour, the truth unfolded in our parents' living room, the same room where I'd been accused and expelled just over a week ago. Emma, to her credit, held nothing back. She admitted to taking credit for my financial contributions, to systematically stealing from their accounts, to forging Dad's signature on the second mortgage, and finally, to her gambling addiction and involvement with Michael Donovan. Throughout her confession, Dad sat motionless, his face a mask of controlled emotion. Only the whitening of his knuckles as he gripped the armrests of his chair betrayed his inner turmoil. When Emma finally finished, silence descended over the room. Mom reached for Dad's hand, but he didn't respond to her touch. "Dad?" Emma said tentatively. "Please say something." "How much?" he asked, his voice eerily calm. "In total, how much money are we talking about?" I answered, knowing Emma might not even know the full extent herself. "Based on Mom's records, about $127,000 has been taken from your accounts over the past year. That includes the second mortgage, which is around $65,000. Dad closed his eyes briefly, absorbing the magnitude of the theft. When he opened them, they fixed on Emma with an intensity I'd never seen before. "And this man, this Michael Donovan, you owe him another $50,000? Emma nodded miserably. "And if you don't pay, or if you don't complete this illegal transaction for him, he's threatened to harm you? To harm all of us?" Another nod. Dad turned to me, his expression softening slightly. "Alex, I owe you an apology, a significant one." "It's okay, Dad." "No, it is not okay." His voice was firm. "I accused you of theft. I threw you out of this house. I cut off your tuition support. I refused to even look at the evidence you tried to show me." He stood up, crossing the room to where I sat. "I failed you as a father, and I am deeply, profoundly sorry." The simple, direct apology hit me harder than I expected. A lump formed in my throat as Dad placed his hand on my shoulder, a gesture of affection he rarely showed. "Thank you," I managed to say. "That means a lot." Dad nodded once, then turned back to Emma. For a moment, I thought he might explode with rage, but instead, his voice came out tired and sad. What you've done is... He seemed to search for adequate words and failed. I don't even know how to process this, Emma. The theft, the lies, involving yourself with criminals, it's beyond comprehension. Emma started crying, silent tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't fix this, Dad said, not unkindly, but with unmistakable firmness. Sorry doesn't pay back what you've taken or erase the danger you've put this family in. I know. Emma's voice was barely audible. Dad turned to Mom and me. We need a plan, a real one. Not just emotional apologies, but concrete steps to resolve this situation. This was the pragmatic engineer I knew. Faced with a problem, no matter how devastating, his instinct was to break it down into solvable components. I've been thinking about that, I said, grateful for his practical approach. We have several issues to address. The money Emma's already taken, the debt to Donovan, the illegal transaction she's being pressured to complete, and of course, her gambling addiction. Dad nodded. Let's start with the most pressing threat. This transaction she's supposed to complete on Friday, that's money laundering, a federal crime. That's completely off the table. But if she doesn't do it, Donovan will come after us, Mom said, fear evident in her voice. We're not going to be blackmailed into committing federal crimes, Dad stated firmly. We need to cut ties with this man completely, which means paying what Emma legitimately owes him, the $50,000 in gambling debts. Where will we get that kind of money? Mom asked. Dad was quiet for a moment, clearly doing mental calculations. Between our emergency fund and liquidating some investments, we can cover it. It will mean delaying retirement by a few years, but better that than the alternatives. The matter-of-fact way he accepted this massive financial blow was humbling. No recriminations, no dramatic declarations, just acceptance and problem-solving. As for the money already taken, he continued, the second mortgage is legally binding, even though it was obtained fraudulently. We'll have to refinance the whole mortgage to get a manageable payment structure. I'll pay you back, Emma interjected. Every cent, I swear. Dad looked at her skeptically. Yes, you will. We'll formalize that with a legal repayment agreement. But money isn't the only issue here, Emma. You need professional help. I know, she admitted. I'll go to rehab, therapy, whatever it takes. You certainly will, Dad confirmed. Because that's non-negotiable. But there's still the matter of Michael Donovan. Paying him off is one thing, but ensuring he leaves our family alone afterward is another. This was the part that had been keeping me up at night. How could we be sure that once paid, Donovan wouldn't come back demanding more? People like him thrived on finding vulnerabilities and exploiting them repeatedly. I've been thinking about that too, I said. We need leverage, something that makes it in Donovan's best interest to leave us alone completely. What kind of leverage could we possibly have against someone like him? Mom asked. A plan had been forming in my mind since speaking with Professor Watkins. Risky, certainly, but potentially effective. Information, I said. Evidence of his illegal activities, structured in a way that it would be released to authorities if anything happens to any of us. Are you talking about blackmail? Dad looked concerned. That's dangerous territory, Alex. Not blackmail. Insurance. I leaned forward. Emma has details of Donovan's money laundering operations, dates, amounts, methods. We document everything, have it notarized and sealed, with instructions for it to be opened and sent to the FBI if any of us are harmed. That's actually not a bad idea, Dad admitted. But how do we communicate this to Donovan without him seeing it as a threat? We don't present it as a threat, but as a business arrangement, I explained. He's a businessman, albeit a criminal one. We offer to pay his money in full, in cash, in exchange for complete separation from Emma and our family. The insurance is just that. Insurance, not a negotiating point. Dad considered this for a long moment. It's risky, but it might work. Emma, would you be willing to document everything you know about Donovan's operations? She nodded immediately. Yes, whatever helps end this. Good. Then here's what we're going to do, Dad said, taking charge in a way that reminded me of when I was a child and he seemed capable of fixing anything. First, we gather the money. Second, Emma documents everything she knows about Donovan. Third, I, not you, Alex, and certainly not Emma, will meet with Donovan to make the payment and establish terms. Dad, no, I protested. These are dangerous people. You can't meet them alone. I won't be alone, he said firmly. I'll have a neutral third party present, someone with enough authority to make Donovan think twice about any duplicity. Who? Mom asked. Dad smiled grimly. My old college roommate, Judge William Foster. He doesn't need to know all the details. Just that we're resolving a private debt situation with someone of questionable repute. His presence alone will add legitimacy and protection. It was a good plan. Better than anything I'd come up with. Still, the thought of my father facing Donovan directly made me uneasy. The next 3 days passed in a flurry of activity. Dad liquidated investments and withdrew the necessary cash. Emma, with my help, documented everything she knew about Donovan's operations, creating a comprehensive record that would be damning if ever released to authorities. Dad contacted Judge Foster, who agreed to be present for the meeting without asking too many questions, a testament to their long friendship. Throughout it all, Emma remained subdued, the gravity of what she'd done and the consequences still unfolding. She'd started attending Gamblers Anonymous meetings daily and had an intake appointment scheduled at a residential treatment facility the following week. Friday arrived with a weight of nervous anticipation. Dad had arranged to meet Donovan at a private room in an upscale downtown restaurant, neutral territory with enough public presence to discourage any extreme behavior. Judge Foster would meet him there. I still don't like this, I told Dad as he prepared to leave, the briefcase containing $50,000 sitting on the kitchen table. Neither do I, he admitted. But it's the cleanest way to handle this. Pay the debt, establish boundaries, move forward. I hugged him tightly. Be careful. This guy is dangerous. So am I, when my family is threatened. There was steel in his voice I'd rarely heard before. The 3 hours Dad was gone were among the longest of my life. Mom, Emma, and I sat in the living room, barely speaking, jumping whenever a car passed by the house. When we finally heard Dad's key in the lock, we all rushed to the door. He looked tired but relieved as he set down the now empty briefcase. It's done. What happened? Mom asked, guiding him to a chair. About what you'd expect. Donovan wasn't happy about losing his leverage over Emma, but with Judge Foster there, he kept things businesslike. I paid the $50,000 and he signed a document acknowledging the debt is paid in full and agreeing to have no further contact with any member of our family. And he just accepted that? I asked skeptically. Not initially. He suggested that Emma still had obligations to fulfill. That's when I mentioned our insurance policy, the sealed documentation of his operations that would find its way to federal authorities if any harm came to us. Dad allowed himself a small smile. Judge Foster, bless him, picked up on the cue, perfectly, mentioning his close connections with the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. He didn't know what was in our documentation, of course, but his presence gave weight to the implication. So it worked? Emma asked, hope in her voice for the first time in days. I believe it did, Dad said. Donovan is a businessman above all. The risk of federal investigation far outweighs whatever value he placed on Emma's continued cooperation. He agreed to our terms rather quickly after that. Relief washed over me, though I knew we weren't entirely out of the woods. There was still the matter of rebuilding our family's finances and, more importantly, rebuilding trust. Over the next month, our family began the long process of healing. Emma entered a 90-day residential treatment program for gambling addiction. Mom and Dad refinanced the house, consolidating both mortgages into a manageable payment plan. Dad reinstated my tuition support, insisting that I shouldn't suffer for Emma's actions or his own failure to believe me. Most surprisingly, my relationship with my parents, especially my father, underwent a profound transformation. The pedestal that Emma had occupied for so long had been painfully dismantled, and in its absence, my parents seemed to truly see me clearly for perhaps the first time. "You know," Dad said one evening as we sat on the porch, just the two of us sharing a rare quiet moment. "In a strange way, this whole ordeal has been clarifying." "How so?" I asked. "For years I saw Emma as the successful one, the one who had it all figured out. And I saw you as the one who needed guidance, who was still finding your way." He looked at me with new respect in his eyes. "I had it completely backward. You've been the responsible one all along, financially, ethically, emotionally. I just couldn't see it." "We all played our assigned roles," I said, not wanting to make him feel worse than he already did. "Emma was the golden child. I was the invisible one. We all just followed the script." "Well, the script has been rewritten," Dad said firmly, "and I'm sorry it took such a catastrophe to make that happen." 2 years have passed since the truth about Emma's gambling addiction and financial deception came to light. The journey from that chaotic period to where we are now has been challenging, painful, and ultimately transformative for our entire family. After our father's meeting with Michael Donovan, a tense negotiation that thankfully ended with a clean break, Emma entered a 90-day inpatient treatment program for gambling addiction. I remember driving her to the facility, a converted mansion in rural Wisconsin. She was terrified, clutching a small duffel bag containing the few personal items. Aloud, "What if I fail at this too?" she whispered as we pulled up to the entrance. "Then you'll try again," I said. "Recovery isn't linear, but you're not alone anymore." That moment marked the beginning of Emma's real transformation. The persona of the perfect daughter, the successful lawyer with the downtown condo and designer wardrobe, was stripped away, leaving just Emma, vulnerable and human. During family therapy sessions, she revealed how suffocating the weight of expectations had become, how gambling initially provided an escape where failure was permissible, even expected. It didn't excuse her actions, but it helped us understand them. After completing the program, Emma spent 6 months in a halfway house. The professional consequences were severe. She lost her position at the law firm and had to surrender her law license temporarily pending ethics review. She faced all of this with a dignity and accountability I hadn't known she possessed. Today, Emma works as a counselor at a gambling addiction center, using her own experience to help others avoid similar pitfalls. She lives in a modest one-bedroom apartment, drives a used car, and has repaid nearly half of what she took from our parents through consistent monthly payments. Last Christmas, she declined gifts, asking instead that any money that would have been spent on her be added to her repayment fund. "The irony isn't lost on me," Emma told me over coffee last week. "I spent my whole life trying to be perfect, and it nearly destroyed me. Now that I've publicly failed, now that everyone knows my worst mistakes, I finally feel like I'm doing something meaningful." She smiled ruefully. "I help people whose society has written off as morally weak because I know firsthand that addiction isn't about moral weakness. It's about pain and escape and the desperate need to feel in control of something, anything." Parents have undergone their own transformation. Dad's heart condition, surprisingly, has improved since the truth came out. His cardiologist suggested that the stress of financial uncertainty and family secrets may have been exacerbating his symptoms. Now that everything is in the open and properly addressed, his blood pressure has stabilized and his energy has returned. The dynamic between my parents has shifted too. Mom no longer defers to Dad's judgment in all matters, especially financial ones. She's taken a more active role in managing their finances, with my occasional guidance. She's also started a support group for families affected by addiction, helping others navigate the complex emotions of loving someone who's betrayed their trust. I was enabling both of them, Mom confessed to me once. Your father with his blind spots about Emma, and Emma with her need to be seen as perfect. I knew things weren't right for years, but I was too afraid to rock the boat. Dad calls me weekly now, sometimes for financial advice, other times just to talk. It's a complete reversal from the days when he dismissed my opinions or delegated me to the periphery of family discussions. During one of these calls, he admitted something that must have been difficult for him. I favored Emma because she reminded me of myself, how I wanted to be seen, he said. And I was harder on you because you reminded me of who I actually was. Careful, practical, always doing the right thing even when it wasn't recognized. I resented that reflection. As for Michael Donovan and his operation, they've kept their distance from our family. 6 months after our final payment, the Golden Horseshoe was raided by federal authorities as part of a larger investigation into money laundering. According to news reports, Donovan is currently awaiting trial on multiple charges. Whether our insurance policy had anything to do with the timing of the investigation, we'll never know for certain. But I like to think our documentation, sealed though it remained, somehow contributed to justice being served. My own life has flourished in ways I couldn't have imagined during that dark period. I've been promoted twice at the financial fraud investigation firm where I work, with my experience in uncovering Emma's deception providing insights that textbooks never could. I'm even teaching a guest lecture series at Northwestern on family financial fraud, detection and intervention. Professor Watkins, who once helped me understand what Emma might be involved with, now introduces me as a colleague. My personal life has changed too. The confidence I gained through standing up for myself and helping my family through crisis attracted different people into my life. I started dating Eric, a forensic accountant I met at a professional conference, who values my analytical mind and ethical backbone. After years of feeling overlooked, it's refreshing to be with someone who appreciates exactly those qualities my family once dismissed. Last month, we gathered to celebrate Dad's 60th birthday. Mom insisted on hosting it at their home. The same home they nearly lost because of Emma's actions, now secured through careful financial restructuring and disciplined budgeting. As we sat around the dining table, I caught myself studying the family photos on the walls. The old photos. The ones where Emma always stood center stage while I was relegated to the edges, had been replaced. In their place hung new images showing us as we are now, imperfect, equal, authentic with each other. No one dominates the frame anymore. No one is pushed to the periphery. I'd like to make a toast, Dad said, raising his glass. To Alex, who had the courage to stand up for the truth when it would have been easier to walk away. You saved this family, daughter, in more ways than one. Mom wiped away tears as she added, to healing what was broken and building something stronger in its place. Emma raised her glass of sparkling water, sober now for 2 years. And to second chances we don't deserve but try every day to earn, I looked around at their faces. No longer the idealized family of my childhood, but something more real, more honest. To truth, I said simply, even when it hurts. Later that evening, as Eric and I drove home under a canopy of stars, I reflected on how strange life's journeys can be. My sister's betrayal and my parents' initial disbelief had caused profound pain, yet that very pain had ultimately freed us all from the roles we'd been trapped in for decades. As someone who works in forensic accounting, I've learned that fraud investigations aren't just about finding missing money, they're about uncovering the truth that people have worked hard to hide, often from themselves. The most difficult cases aren't about sophisticated financial schemes, but about the stories people tell themselves to justify their actions. In my family's case, we all participated in a fiction. Emma as the golden child who could do no wrong, Me as the practical daughter who needed no attention, Mom as the peacekeeper, Dad as the unquestioned authority. That fiction nearly destroyed us. Being a woman in forensic accounting has taught me that people often underestimate the quiet observers, the ones taking notes in the corner. Throughout my childhood and early adulthood, my family underestimated me in much the same way. There's a certain power in being underestimated. It gives you space to work, to gather evidence, to build your case meticulously before presenting it. I've brought that lesson into my professional life. When male colleagues sometimes dismiss my insights, I don't fight for immediate recognition. I quietly document, investigate, and present irrefutable evidence. The satisfaction of watching realization dawn on their faces mirrors what I felt when my parents finally saw the truth about Emma. Sometimes I've learned, families must break apart to rebuild something better. The truth can shatter illusions, but without that shattering, genuine healing remains impossible. Our family was fortunate enough to get a second chance, to become what we should have been all along. People who see each other clearly, love each other honestly, and support each other through both success and failure. That, perhaps, is the most valuable thing to come from this ordeal. Not just the restoration of my reputation or the recovery of stolen funds, but the restoration of a family that had been broken long before any money went missing. As Eric and I pulled into our driveway, he squeezed my hand. "You're quiet." Thinking. "About your family?" I nodded. "Just reflecting on how far we've come." "You know what amazes me about you?" he said. "Most people who go through what you did would become bitter, especially toward their sister. But you helped her, even after everything she did." I considered this. I think when you grow up always being compared to someone, always living in their shadow, you have two choices. You can resent them and wish for their downfall, or you can recognize that the comparison itself is the problem, not the other person. Emma and I will never have the effortless sisterly bond that some siblings enjoy. Too much has happened between us. But we've found something perhaps more valuable: honest respect. She respects my strength and integrity. I respect her courage in facing her demons and rebuilding her life from scratch. As for my parents, they continue to make amends in small but meaningful ways. Dad recently helped me set up a scholarship fund at Northwestern for students studying financial crime prevention, using money he'd once set aside for Emma's law school graduation gift. Mom has become my biggest cheerleader, proudly telling her friends about my work and achievements. The journey isn't over. Trust, once broken, takes years to rebuild. Emma still struggles with her addiction, attending meetings weekly. My parents still sometimes slip into old patterns of communication, and I still occasionally feel the sting of past hurts. But we're moving forward, eyes open, telling ourselves a new, truer story about who we are and what we mean to each other. And in the end, that's what matters. Not the perfect family portrait we once pretended to be, but the authentic, imperfect family we're becoming. After all, the most meaningful truths are often found not in what we project to the world, but in what we finally admit to ourselves. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.